Hi there guys, how's it going? In this video we're going to look at the recent article in the Times that stated prominent EU legal experts have backed the British government's demand to rewrite the controversial section of the Brexit withdrawal agreement that gives Brussels potentially sweeping powers over UK state aid decisions. So all in all, we should listen to it. By the way, don't forget, if you like what you see, actually wait, hang on for a second. If what I should say is, if you like what you hear, you should press that subscribe bell and share button and blah, 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 as opposed to if you like what you see. Because if that's the case, you really need a trip down to Specsavers, quite fast, And I know this with absolute certainty because even without the slightest fear of contradiction, because I have to look at this close up every morning I have a shave. And it ain't pretty. In fact, I think the skin is falling off my bones somehow. But anyway, let's go. The article by George Peretz QC of Monkton Chambers and by James Webber of Shearman Sterling is, you have to pay attention to it. Just to explain this, however, we need to remember that Monkton Chambers specializes on commercial civil law with particular focus on EU competition, commercial litigation and arbitration, okay? Shearman Sterling specializes in cross-border regulatory matters and principally acts for the financial services industry, the banks, investments, banks, insurance, financial infrastructures, those guys. And it must also be said that these firms have particular expertise in Brexit as well as transatlantic regs as well. Okay, so these guys are right at the coalface, and unless they have an under-the-table interest in renegotiating the withdrawal agreement, they should be listened to. If, however, they have an undeclared vested interest that is affecting their business, they really should, as a matter of fairness, give a health warning before we could become overcome with laughter, which is what happened to me. Okay, just give me a minute to gather my thoughts here. Okay, I feel better now. The Times in their article, of course, completely ignores this element, which in my opinion is perhaps why they use two legal eagles to support their claim rather than the single normal numpty they would generally use. You see, as we basically covered in two previous videos, and all joking aside, the UK legal profession has been dealt a hammer blow, not by the EU, but by the UK itself, and they were serious body blows. One was the way in which the City of London was thrown under the bus and abandoned throughout the negotiations by the UK, which, by the way, came as much of a surprise to the EU as it did to London, and this was divulged by Sir Ivan Yates. Sir Ivan Rogers, by the way, at a Common Select Committee hearing in a 2-hour submission. So let's take a little listen to a bit of this.
So what would be great, given that 80% of our economy is actually services and a very significant proportion of our exports and imports are services, perhaps parliamentarians could focus a little bit more on the non-tariff questions and kind of what's happening to services industries. The reality is, for many services sectors, not just financial services, but business services, accountancy services, legal services, feel that they have been completely neglected by both the executive and the legislature in the last 2 years, and that none of their interests are registered in government documents, despite the fact that 80% of our economy is not manufacturing.
And there you have it. Now, of all the people I've listened to over the last 5 years, I can say with hand on heart, Sir Ivan Rogers is the most pragmatic, straight-talking, politically unbiased dude I have watched and listened to without exception. Without exception. If you watch him on any YouTube video, especially in that 2-hour submission to the Select Committee, from which this clip was extracted, or that clip was extracted, by the way, you could be forgiven for thinking he had a time machine at his disposal, because everything he predicted 3 years into the future was right on point. It was exactly on point. And 3 years is possibly wrong. I think it was more like 4, okay? Unlike, however, the numpty Frost, Sir Ivan knew exactly what way Brexit would play out in general terms, and in private engagements within the legal profession pre the TCA, he asked the audience one simple question, which went a bit like this. Ask yourselves, what is the measure of gain for the EU to facilitate the City of London services industry to compete with the EU services industry? Now, he was asking the right question. And the answer was obvious, that the EU service industry had little to gain by appropriating equivalents to the services industry in London. So they turned down London for accession to Lugano. Okay? Regular viewers of this channel may have already seen the Lugano videos, but for those of you who have not, I'll leave the links in the description and also put them at the end of the video or above my head here somewhere. Guys, if you really want to understand it, take a half an hour out of your day, read it. It's simple to follow, okay? But back to George and James. Their call to visit Article 10 has long been a target of Brexiteers in the Conservative Party because it requires the UK government to refer any state subsidy decision that might have an impact on goods traded between Northern Ireland and the EU for approval to the European Commission, and vice versa. But they voted on it. They accepted it. It was recommended by the person who's now calling for it to be abandoned and relying on two legal firms whose position to gain from the forming of contracts and especially in the resolutions of disputes has been swept aside because our numpty Frost and Bojo the Clown ignored the City of London. Okay? It's that simple. Nothing more complicated than that. But the reason they ignored it was, quite frankly, that they simply were not up to the task because their teams did not have enough experience in the field. And the EU are generally recognized as being experts and tough as nails alongside the US and alongside Japan. Okay? Which explains, by the way, why the Japanese deal has shown no real benefits to the UK. So even if we look at how this is being handled, it just smells of stupidity and ignorance. As we've discussed before, how can you possibly think that in any situation in which you are looking for a compromise for a resolution, that you issue a letter entitled, and I'm quoting, the command document? Who do you think you are? It's simply preposterous. It's ridiculously, it's stupid. In summary, of course, the legal eagles will claim there are grounds to do this and grounds to do that because they have nothing to lose by throwing some fuel on the embers of a fire that is just smouldering. They've nothing to lose. Though Article 10 basically covers government subsidies and but it also covers in the annexes how such disputes are resolved. Okay, and it's referred to in Annex 1 and Annex 3 of the Directive of the European Parliament and of the Council that refers specifically to the gaining of admission to such disputes by companies like Monktown Chambers, like Sherman and Sterling. Okay, in my honest opinion, this is Frost's last throw of the dice. This has nothing to do with Northern Ireland and everything to do with trying to cover the balls up he and Bojo have made. And this is simply to allow the UK government not to implement the border controls they said they were going to do in October. Because if they do it, the supply chain will disintegrate. It won't go slow, it won't break down, it'll just disintegrate. They have to have an excuse to do this. And this is going to be their reason. Thanks for watching. See you on the flip side. Bye-bye.